Welcome to the XSF Podcast, hosted by Devante and Lou. This is the podcast to show that every human is capable of being extreme. Tune in to discover how you are too. All right, everybody. Welcome back for another amazing episode of the
Podcast.
Boom. You already know how we do it. And this week, I am pleased to bring you another friend of Prescript, friend of the podcast, friend of everyone here at XSF, and just he should be your friend too. Go add the man, Kyle Baxter. Hey, we got to give this dude a round of applause because honestly, he is a wealth of knowledge. And that round of applause was very much so deserved. Now, this dude, he's gone through a kinesiology degree. He's going through more school. He helps coaches like myself be better at our craft, understand our own bodies even deeper, and goes about even helping us all in the Prescript labs, breaking all these questions down for us, diving into them and explaining them and being able to really make the stuff we're talking about very applicable to what we do. Now, in today's episode, we really talked about pain further. Me and Lou have had our pain episodes, pain and the knee pain. And what we talked about today was even how you can have short-term fixes for pain and then also long-term fixes for pain. Now, make sure you listen in because there's amazing tips dropped throughout the entire episode. And Baxter used to be a skater himself, so he really does understand how us skaters operate and what we need to do to just perform as best as we want to, and to make sure when we do feel these pains that we're kind of checking them and making sure that we can continue to skate. So make sure if you're really interested in understanding or wanting to understand how to control pain, how to get through pain, and how to work out of the pain that you may have, make sure you tune in with Ux and the homie Kyle Baxter. Now, before we hop into the episode, we got to give a shout out to our sponsors. Thank you, Third Layer Skate Park and Skate Shop. We love you guys. Keep killing it on the daily. And hey, this month is the anniversary of our beloved Henry Gartland. So I'm just going to give a moment of silence for that really quick. Everybody, let's do it. All right, man. We love you, dog. Next on the list, Monte Coso Skateboards. Still riding that brand new board, and it's still going hard. Make sure you check them out. And if you do, let them know that XSF sent you. Getting that 10% discount. Let's go. Hooking it up as always. And last but not least on the list, I always say, I got you in my cup. First thing as I go in the morning, right after my morning cardio, we got Batch Roasting Co. Shout out to these amazing humans. Make sure if you want some amazing tasting coffee that also has amazing benefits for your body, go check these humans out. And if you do, make sure you go to the website. And when you check out, enter the code BOMBS BODIES. Pretty sure that's correct. And if not, I'll make sure everything's down in the show notes. But without further ado, I hope you all enjoyed today's episode with the homie Kyle Baxter. No, so you know what? I'm giving it to you. We're doing it. It's my man, my personal coach, the man Kyle Baxter. Say what up to everybody. Give everybody a little elevator pitch of who you are and what you do, my man.
Yeah, my name's Kyle Baxter. I don't really know what to call myself. I'm just in between things, but I would guess I'm in between a physio and a trainer and an online coach and an educator for trainers and a bunch of other stuff. In terms of my pedigree, currently in my master's in physio, but I do kind of a little bit of everything, a little bit different in terms of what I actually do on a day-to-day basis.
So what do you mean exactly by that on a day-to-day basis? How does that change so much for you?
So I offer what on my website would be called movement coaching, but it's is almost a blend between everything I didn't like about working on a computer screen. So
Okay.
what I didn't like about just being an online coach and programming for someone was just giving someone sets and reps doesn't really help them that much. And then you'll see a lot of these group mentorships lately, or like courses. Courses are good. Group mentorships, like they're just very, very non-specific in terms of helping the individual.
Yeah.
So I kind of try to blend the two of those, right? So with my movement coaching, we get a little bit of the programming, right? We get a little bit of the why, and then we get to identify what would be the flaws in or areas of improvement in the individual's training or product that they provide, and then we fill those gaps instead of just going through a random 8 weeks of talking about things that the person might already know about or that don't apply to their population. So it allows me to get very specific with each client that I have and each person that I work with in terms of where can I best help them fill the gaps. So I'll give some examples. Like some of my clients, I literally just program for them, and we send voice notes back and forth. Some clients I don't program at all, and we just have an hour education session, and then I don't hear from them. Some clients literally send me 7 to 50 voice notes a day with videos, and we just basically talk over WhatsApp 24/7. Sometimes I talk about like business development. Sometimes we talk about content creation. Sometimes we talk about actual physio things, movement. It like every client is different, and I think that's why I can actually provide a service that I enjoy, and why I held off offering myself out for so long to actually work with people while I'm going through school, because I didn't like anything that was out there. So I kind of made a blend of everything to fit the specific need of whoever I'm working with.
No, I like that because you just kind of took the stuff that you liked from a bunch of different things and then hodgepodge it into your own way of, making it applicable to the people you work with and just letting them also like self-regulation, it kind of gives like them the chance to like also choose like, okay, and realize like, I know for me working with you, it's helped me like be like, okay, what do I need to learn? Like what actually matters most, and helps me break down for myself like, okay, maybe I'm lacking here, and then just dive into that a little bit, keep going farther with it, and then it just gets your brain rolling, and you just kind of start leading the way on the stuff you want to learn, and then like you said, fill in the gaps. But no, that's a genius idea. Like you're killing it from my perspective, so definitely love seeing everything you're doing, man.
I think half the battle with any kind of like self development or like wanting to be better as a coach, it's not even like filling the gaps, it's like identifying the gaps. Even like with myself, I only know what I know. I only live my own life, right? But when I get someone else's perspective on it, it's a lot easier to say like, oh wow, like maybe I do have a gap there, maybe I can fix something. I get another opinion, and that's kind of almost what's as valuable as me helping fill the gaps, is me identifying like, hey, did you know that you did this way? And then they're like, oh well, never thought of it like that. Now it's like, now we can learn together. So
no, I like that. I think like one thing I definitely really want to talk about more so today, and because just me and Lou have been on the topic of pain, and I know something that we literally just did this morning was help me figure out some gnarly shoulder pain that I've been dealing with for quite some time. And however we want to kind of swing it, but really I just want you to talk real quick on how you first go about like identifying pain, like how you kind of look at it, and then where you go when you decide like, okay, if it's not serious to the point where, it's like structural, like damage, what do you decide to do from there? Like, how do you go about getting somebody out of pain?
Yeah. So I think the first,
for instance, my shoulder, we could use for example too.
Yeah, let's do that. The first two things we have to understand about pain is, number one, pain is not damage. Does not always equal damage. And number two, the biggest thing is you don't experience pain in your body, you experience pain in your brain. Pain is just a perception of the combination of all of the stimulus that you were in at this particular moment in time. Right? So visual stimuli, proprioceptive stimuli, actual noxious stimuli, which some people call pain receptors. Right? So all of that stuff gets sent up to your brain.
Okay. Yep.
And then your brain interprets it all, does brain things, and then spits out, are we safe or are we not safe? Or are we potentially unsafe? Right? If the brain's like, hey, this might not be cool, then it gives a signal. That signal might be pain or discomfort. Right? So it lets you know, hey, like, these things, something's going on.
So is that why then, like, for instance, with like skateboarding, right? Like, if I'm just like chilling, like not skating like super hard, you know, I'm just like messing around and I fall and it's like, damn, like that hurt, bro. Like that didn't feel good. But then like there's the times where you're skating and you're trying a trick, like you're trying to get a trick on film. You need this last trick for your part, or you're like doing a contest and you're skating and you fall and you take that fall. Is that also why like you're not really perceiving it as pain? Like it doesn't hurt right then and there because your brain's just so preoccupied on getting up and continuing like what you're doing, like task at hand, and you don't have like the time to then perceive it as pain? Is that like why that would be?
Yeah, so when I'm trying a big trick, or like I only have a certain time, I need to get this on film, I'm in a competition, etc. Right? I'm in a different state of like nervous system arousal. Right? It's almost like fight or flight, if you will. So that higher state of arousal kind of pushes my pain tolerance or pain threshold a little bit higher, because my body thinks like that is less important. Like I need to do whatever is going on now. Right? So when you're in the moment, you might have a fall that is very painful in some circumstances, but because you're in a different state of arousal, you don't experience that pain at that time. But then, like, you get home, you lie down, you wake up the next morning, you're like, oh, my knee's frigged now, right? Because you're down-regulated the nervous system, and now it's like, oh, I'm lying in bed. Now everything is like a lot more brought to the surface.
Yeah. Okay. That makes complete sense. Now from there, when let's say you are feeling these pains, so not necessarily from like an acute injury, like you fell, but like what about the pains you feel from like just daily movement and stuff? Like when you're feeling like those aches and pains, like what is that like perception of things? Like why is that happening usually?
Yeah, so it's all kind of the same, just a combination of your brain interpreting stimuli. Right? So if I sit in one position for too long, my muscles don't need to send as much signals to my brain in terms of proprioception, like where I am in space. Right? So my brain's
so
like,
for
oh,
me,
I'm not
speaking
moving. So keep going.
Okay, no, I was just gonna say, like with my shoulder, just kind of putting this into perspective, when I'm driving, right? Like I always told you, when I'm driving the truck for miles and miles and miles, like that's when I get the most pain, when I'm sitting in like that position. Now, when it comes to that, is that because my muscle where like necessarily like in my shoulder, like it just is not comfortable in that position? Like, is that kind of why I'm then perceiving it as pain?
Yeah, so your brain perceives that position as unsafe. Right? So if we say we need to be externally rotated to hold the wheel, if I don't have access to that external rotation, in terms of my brain thinking it's a safe position, right? There's no like not access. It's just really your brain regulates everything. The nervous system regulates everything.
Yep.
My nervous system deems that unsafe. The longer I spend in that position, and you're not, then move. Your brain's like, hey, what are you doing? Stop. then the pain gets higher and
Yep.
higher to hopefully get you to move out of the position your brain thinks is unsafe.
Makes sense. Okay. So from there then, if you are feeling those pains in those positions, but you have to be in those positions, like for me, right? Like I can't just not drive the truck. Like I have to drive the truck. What do I need to do then? Like, how do I start to figure out, like, okay, how do I sit in this position, but also like feel better sitting here? Like, what would I have to then? I mean, you can go a million different ways. There's a bunch of different ways to skin a cat. We're specifically talking about the shoulder, but just kind of stepwise, like, how would you start to break that down and figure this out for a client?
So we start with kind of like, you can look at the short-term fix or the long-term fix, right? Sometimes, obviously, the long-term fix is better, but the short-term fix can sometimes give us the relief we need so that we can get to the long-term fix eventually, right? So the short-term fix would be to give your brain more stimuli to help it understand it's not in a dangerous position. So examples of that, say you have shoulder pain or elbow pain, and you put on a compression sleeve, right? That compression sleeve squeezes your body, right? We have pressure receptors in our skin. Now your body understands where it is in space a little bit better, and your brain thinks, oh, wow, my shoulder's not in pain, right? Or you foam roll, or you stretch, or you get a massage gun, or all of these things are just external stimuli that help your body understand where it is in space. But then when these go away, your body goes back to being like, oh, maybe this is dangerous because the stimulus is now gone. So that would be like the short-term fix, and that's what a lot of people gravitate to in terms of it works really fast. But people don't understand that it's just short-term because when that stimulus is gone, your body still doesn't understand what's going on. So a long-term fix would be we use maybe a short-term method to get you into a better position, and then once we're in that position that we couldn't access before, we spend time in that position so your body can almost recalibrate. Oh, okay, look, this is actually a safe position, right? The only time we get pain in certain positions because we don't spend any time there, right? So your body doesn't really know. So it's like, imagine your body has like a map of the positions that they know are safe, right? So what we're doing is like we're unveiling more parts of that map. But if we don't ever go to those places, those parts of the map kind of go away. They get all foggy, right? So we're just kind of broadening our scope of where we know is safe. And then hopefully if we continue to use those movements, now our brain understands we're safe. We don't experience pain there, right? But if we sit around, don't use any of those movements, as we age, we get less. It has nothing to do with aging. It has everything to do with our lifestyle, right? We're more sedentary. We don't use those positions. Now our big map that we have access to everything that's pain-free now becomes this. And now I throw my back out walking upstairs, right? Did you actually injure something? Probably not.
And I was just going to say,
went into a position.
Yeah. Yep. I was just going to say, so like as that dwindles down, then the box of, or the circle of, the movements that give you, get you closer to that line of injury, it gets bigger, right? So it's like as that your access to those ranges of motion gets smaller, and let's say you have to access then a range of motion now you don't have access to, well, you're probably going to get injured a lot easier going to that range of motion.
I think one thing to understand
Or going through
is to understand the word injury is kind of not used in the right context, right? It's like, do we have an injury in terms of like actual structure being injured, or did we experience pain? Because those are two different things.
Okay, I like that.
Right? So your injury that we worked on today, you might have a structural thing that's causing you a little bit of discomfort, but the amount of pain you were experiencing didn't match up to that because we could make a change very quick, right? We did, 10 breaths of a breathing drill and your shoulder felt better. That's not me fixing an injury. that's just me convincing your body that this position isn't dangerous. So being
Okay.
injured and experiencing pain are very different things. And I think
Yeah, and
we
see,
recognize that, we can kind of understand the solution to these things a lot better.
I think that was a great thing to point out, because like even just myself, like going to the doctor and knowing these things, right? And like I go to the doctor and they'll be like, oh, like just with this recent thing, they're like, oh, you have a slap tear, like don't lift like anything more than 10 pounds, don't do this and that, right? So then like I could see somebody, like if you don't have knowledge and you don't understand like the body, like how you're just saying that, like because I knew like I was fine because I was able to do all these other things throughout my training. I mean, you've seen the videos, like I've been training hard and stuff. And like, for me, I was like, okay, well, it can't be that crazy to where like I shouldn't be doing things like the way they made it feel like. And then like also like where you go in your head with that, like being told like you're injured, right? Like, oh no, like I can't move that part of the body. I can't use it. I can't do this. And like how you're saying is like, hey, well, let's kind of switch it around a little bit and look at it and be like, well, let's see, are you just experiencing pain or are you actually injured? And then you just kind of deduct from there and just keep moving along. So I love that you brought that up. That was a great point to point out. So with skating then, right? So with somebody who skates and skates and skates, right? Let's say you have a really good session, you wake up the next morning and you're like, oh, I'm in a lot of pain right now. Like my hips are hurting, or whatever. Now, would that just be from overuse? And when it comes to that, like how do you mitigate that? Like if you don't want to stop skating hard, right? Like that's not the goal. Like you want to keep skating hard. Like, well, what do we do then? Like how do we not feel so sore and in pain or perceive that we're in pain that next morning?
Mm-hmm. I feel like there's kind of two ways to go with this that might be happening. So like number
Mm-hmm.
one is like you just worked really hard, right? Your body needs to
Yeah,
recover.
exactly.
Your body's moving things around. Your body's releasing more chemicals. Those chemicals cause discomfort or pain or delayed onset muscle
Mm-hmm.
soreness or anything you want to call it, right? Number two
Yep.
is if we skate in a certain way for our whole life and we don't have access to these positions
Mm-hmm.
that we use in life, now we might
Mm-hmm.
these positions we might be by skating, right? Like the part of our map that is for skating is very clear, right? But the
Yes.
part of our map that is
Mm-hmm.
for walking up stairs two at a time might not be, right? That's just an example. So like
Okay. Yes.
because skating is one of the things, like it's pretty variable in terms of like what you're doing, right? Like you're moving your body around in different positions
Mm-hmm.
all the time.
Of course.
But it is also you're moving your body around. It's quite similar in terms of like you're always riding the same way mostly, unless you ride switch. Both your feet
Mm-hmm.
are always on the board,
Switch. Yeah.
right? So it's like we are
Mm-hmm.
doing similar things, and then when we
Mm-hmm.
need to do different things, now we might have some discomfort. So a lot of the training
Okay.
might be getting into a little bit of different positions than we do when we skate, in order to give you some more variability. So when you skate, you can continue to be in those positions. So we talked about it today, how you skate
Okay.
it in a certain way, and
Yeah.
you have a certain way
Yep.
of how you set up your board, and that biases
Mm-hmm.
you into being the skater
Let's
that you
let's
are.
let's let's go deeper into that. So that's something that was really interesting this morning. We were talking about that, and for me, I've always noticed, always ever since, like you were saying, you skate your whole life a certain way, and like watching the videos, and then like really thinking about how I've skated, and always being like, dang, why do I land so heavy? Like I feel like I just land just abruptly. Like I feel like there's not much like smoothness to my landings. Like I can make a trick look nice, but this is cool too because like me and my homie could do the same trick and it can look a million miles different. Like it's crazy because like then you ask me like, hey, how tight are your trucks? Like they're pretty loose, right? Without even me saying anything, we've never even talked about my board setup, and I thought it was dope that you like knew that, and I was like, yeah. my trucks are probably as loose as they can get. Like if I jiggle my board, like my trucks move. And you were saying, well, like let's look at this now. When you're landing, my body's not moving. Well, how am I still pulling the trick off? It's because my board is doing the moving for me. I'm not allowing my body to then move. So with my training, now giving, like you were saying, me more access to those ranges of motion that I'm just not allowing myself to get to when I'm skateboarding, because it's like that's not the main focus, right? Like we're not going to cue me when I'm doing a trick like, hey man, make sure you do this in the middle of the trick. Like, no, I'm going to fall. Like I'm not going to be able to think about that stuff. So is that kind of why then, in my training, like we're going through all this different stuff to then allow me more access to those other ranges of motion?
Yeah, right. With skating, that's something that's so variable in terms of like the positions that you're going to get in. So like you were someone
Mm-hmm.
who's very biased towards one position, but you make up for that
Yep.
by having your loose trucks that do a lot of the work for you. So if you imagine like
Mm-hmm.
if you were to jump and land on the ground's not moving.
Yes.
So if you're not in a
Mm-hmm.
perfect position, you're going to be a little bit wobbly, right? But with your
Yeah.
trucks being so loose, as you land on that board, the board can accommodate for the positions that you aren't as comfortable in,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yep.
now the board is doing the job of your body adapting to that position, which helps you as a skater because the
Mm-hmm.
work plays into your biases, right? So, but if we want
Exactly.
to
And
go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say, like, I think it's just like important too to also state, like, hey, like, does it matter, like, for you? Like, what I'm saying? Like, if I was like, this is more so like for me thinking of like, okay, well, if I was another skater and stuff, like, where does the line matter in this stuff? Like, how much does it matter? Like that I have more access to these ranges of motion and stuff? Well, it's like, well, just how much better do I want to move? Really, I think is like how much it comes down to, like when I skate and stuff. Because it's not that I can't skate this way. I've been skating this way and I've pulled it off for years, but I think just like really looking at it and being like, okay, like where does it matter for me? Like, do I care enough? And also like, do I care enough? Like also like taking away from skateboarding and just looking at how you move throughout life too. Like, cause it is going to translate over. Like if you, bias stuff in skating and you skate quite a bit, like you're probably going to bias that type of motion throughout life. So I think that's just an important thing to like ask yourself, like, okay, like why and when would it matter? But that was just something I was thinking when you were saying all that.
Mm-hmm. So like for you, we talked about like filling in
Mm-hmm.
the gaps, right? So
Yep.
we can take skating and your life as kind of two separate things. So if we talk about like skating, you want to be a better skater, right? There's a million things that make a better skater, right? So like maybe
Yep.
you're going into a competition and you want all your tricks to look a lot smoother. Okay, we need to now
Mm-hmm.
make you not as stiff so we can stiffen up your trucks. So now we can land and it physically just looks smoother, but we're doing the same thing, right? Or
Yes.
it's like, hey, I
Yep.
want to do these tricks that I've been struggling with. It's like, oh, maybe if we had more options in terms of how you can manipulate your body, when you land a little bit funny on the setup that you do have, now you land the trick because you can reel that in instead of going the other way, right? Those tricks that are like on the brink of like it was so close, got it. Now it's like you have access to this little
Mm-hmm.
bit of a different position, we're a little bit more stable in that position, and now we are improving that way.
Yep.
So it almost comes down to like
Mm-hmm.
identifying the areas of improvement and what gaps do we want to fill as a skater and a human in terms of movement.
Yeah. No, and I love that you brought that up, because like ever since we started doing this and like you've helped me a ton, like just be able to like think about this and really sit down with myself and think about the way I'm skating. Like every time I go skate, like I'm learning a new trick every single time. Like, oh, maybe even two tricks. Like, cause I get to skate once a week, but I have so much time to think about it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm moving better like than I have. Like I'm getting better. Like it's not just like in the landing, but just like the way I do tricks and the way like I feel when I'm doing, especially like transition stuff for some reason, like has been very transferable to me. Like just the way the hips and you're really glued to the board, like you're not really doing a lot of flip tricks there. Like at least I'm not. I'm just more so going fast and like grinding stuff and like going with the flow of the ramp. But I've noticed like just that motion alone getting a lot better as I'm focusing on these things in my training, right? Like focusing on just getting better motion out of my hips, making sure that my feet are doing certain things, and just noticing that transferability over is really fun. It's a cool feeling.
Mm-hmm. Especially when it comes down to, like you spoke about your style is like, okay, we're not really doing like a lot of flip tricks. It's like, I want to go with the flow of the ramps. It's like, hey, when I go into a ramp and then out, like I can produce a lot more speed out of there. Now my hips can do different things. My center mass can shift around. Like I don't have to push at all during a session, right? I can just pop up, extend, drop down into that, and now I'm going 10 times faster. Now I have the speed I need to pull off the tricks that I wasn't able to do before.
I like that. That's okay. That makes a lot of sense. So another thing I wanted to, real quick talk about with pain is, for this sessions where you kind of have to like get through it. Like, you know what I mean? Like you have to, let's say you're in a contest, you fell, and you got another run coming up and you're like, dang, like kind of tweaked my hip a little bit, but we're athletes, it's kind of one of those things. You're just like, okay, I got to just kind of get through it and do it. What would you say would be something in that sense that you would have to kind of work on? Like, what could you do? Can you even do anything in those moments? Like, do you whip out the foam roller? Do you start foam rolling? Do you just kind of sit there and like kind of psych yourself up mentally to like then perceive the pain, like get that perception different about the pain? Like, what would be the best option there?
I think it's very varied between every person because we all respond to different stimuli. But in terms of when I need to perform, if I'm thinking about my pain, it's going to hinder my performance regardless of who I am. Right? So say I have 2 runs, 3 runs, and I fall between run 1 and 2. Insert those short-term things that we talked about before. Maybe it's physically like just taking some tape, like putting it around your wrist. Right now, I feel it less, or it's like now I'm less attention drawn to that, and I can go skate. Right? Like, am I going to am I thinking about like, did I actually injure structure, or am I experiencing pain? Right? Probably with skating, probably a bit of both. But when you need to get the job done, like you need that short-term fix to feel good to go back out. Right? That could be like chugging an energy drink. Right? That could be like slapping your back a bunch of times.
Yeah, like something to just get you going. And I think that's like, it's just like there's always like these two sides of things, right? Like, no, it's good or it's bad, or it's don't do it or do it. And I think it's like we'll just know when to implement these things, and like when does it matter to like use it the most. And for this instance, like, just tape it up, like do what you need to do, like whatever, get on the ground and scream it out if you have to, if that's what's gonna happen, like whatever. But I think that's like a very important thing to note is like, if it's gonna get you through it, then just do it. But then also being smart enough to then know, hey, I still gotta like implement some long-term stuff to make sure this isn't like happening consistently, because I think that's where a lot of people get burnt out in skating too, is like you get to this point. I only know like a handful of dudes who still can like skate consistently who are older. Like now skating older is like 35 plus to me. Like that's kind of like the cutoff. And I've noticed the people who still are skating, like the owner at Third Lair, he does a lot of the things that I talk about, and he's always like the one thing that helps. And like Trog, he's the dude who builds all the ramps there. Shout out to him. He's dope. I love that dude. But they make sure they're at least like doing something. Like they do some type of stretching. They do something that's at least taking them off their board and like putting them in space in a different place and like focusing on their body and how they move. And I think that's just an important thing to note, is like, even if you're not diving into it to like the extent that, me and you do, because like we're really after like performance and like all the stuff that we've talked about, like, but even just skating long term and just enjoying it for like the rest of our lives as long as we can. I just think it's interesting how the people who are still here skating and older are, doing something at least. Like the people who aren't, it's like, hey, you probably just didn't look at the long term stuff and couldn't really keep it up, and then just kind of got burnt out. I just think it's good thing to be able to know, like, hey, like there still is work to be done. Like the short term stuff's great, it works, it definitely does, but I think it's just good to know long term that, and also with that too, like when it comes to long term, how long are we talking? Like, because a lot of I think one of the things is like, how long do I do this for? Like, how, I think that's one of the questions that I get asked a lot is like, how long do I do this? How would you answer that? If somebody comes to you asking like, well, how long do I have to do this?
In terms of like a certain position, it's the body's very smart and is very adaptive, as you know from our conversation earlier, right? Like it's really like if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So for a lot of aging skaters, it's probably not the actual skating that causes them discomfort. It's the fact that all they do is skate and then sit, or skate and then do their job that is requires sitting. So like, it's not the skating that's like that kind of like causing them pain or discomfort. It's before that they're in discomfort, and it makes them not want to go skate because they don't feel good. Right? Because skating's the part of the map that they still kind of have because they did it for so long. Right? But they don't have the like walking around, going up and down stairs. Like the simple things that we take for granted is the things that we lose when we just start sitting around. So
okay. So it's more so not the skating. Like it's always because I think that's like the thing that's blamed is like, oh, I just can't do this. Like these falls, like all this stuff is getting to me. But it's more so like, well, let's look at the stuff you might not be doing outside of skateboarding. Like, what are you doing off the board actually to allow you to be able to have access to all this still without feeling those pains? So, okay, like that's a great thing to point out. So, go ahead.
The part that's on the board is probably the good part, right? But if you start your session and you're thinking about your knee that's hurt all day, now you're just going to continue to think about your knee because your body thinks it's important, and then you have knee pain as you skate. But then you correlate that knee pain with skating, which it might be correlated, it might not be. But it probably isn't the skating that's making your knee pain. It's probably all the stuff you're not doing that your body doesn't understand that that's a safe position.
Yep. So then it's like more so like, hey, when you are skating, you're just getting the feedback there because like you do have that map, like you were saying, in skating to kind of get there, but it's not to say like, hey, your body's comfortable being there per se, and that's because you don't do it elsewhere besides on the board.
Right, and then
cool. All right, that makes a lot of sense.
Whatever positions we spend time in the most are what we're going to be biased to. Right, so if you think about how much time you spend skating per week, I don't know, 5-6 hours on a good week, maybe less than that. If you think about how much time you sit, it's probably upwards of 5, 8, 9 hours a day. Like the sitting part of the map, just so clear, right? The skating part of the map, it's not pretty clear. Right, you've done it a long time, so it's clearer. And then, like the rest of the map, no idea what's going on. Right, and then people start to get biased towards, towards sitting. Feels good, so I'm just going to keep doing that. When it's like it's almost the opposite of like you need to do something else to clear up parts of the map, or else you're just going to have to sit your whole life.
Yep.
So,
okay. So it's really just looking at it as like, okay, I probably am getting this due to, probably just not having that part of the map anymore, or just like limiting that part of the map and not using it. Right. And it's like just knowing like you still can, that's the thing, like the injury or pain thing. I think that's also like a great point to bring it back to is like, I think that helps a lot is realizing like, hey, is it just pain that I'm feeling or like, am I injured or is it just pain I'm experiencing? And then continuing that and going from there. So with that, when it comes to pain and like perception and all that and athletes, do you see any benefit in like working through pains? Like if you have like say my shoulder, right? Like so for example, like yesterday, this was me. This is just how I did yesterday, right? I went to train, I went to go do my rear lunges and stuff, right? Took those for a rip. It kind of hurt just grip wise, but I was fine, got through it. And then I had, the lying hook press. Pressing was just a whole nother story. Shoulder just flared up. I was like, okay, that hurt. And then I tried to do like a push up variation, that hurt. And I was like, okay, I'm calling it for the day. Do you think there's value anytime like working through that? Or do you think it's smarter to then stop, take a second and look at like, okay, why would I be experiencing this? And then kind of working through it from there.
Mm-hmm. I think about when we have the understanding that we do now, that we've talked about. So we have pain is not damage, and do I have an injury or am I experiencing pain? Because my body thinks that a position is not safe.
Yeah.
Right. So say I go into my workout and I have a 3 out of 10 pain, and as I work out, my pain is tolerable and it continues to be 3 out of 10. It's like okay, like I didn't make it worse. Right, my body still thinks that something's up. I should probably do something different to make my pain better. But if my pain is 5 to 3 out of 10 when I start, and it's slowly getting worse and worse and worse, now that I would say we'll call it there, because that's going to affect your performance, and you don't want to have a lot of bad reps, right? But that also gives you insight on if I need to go into this position and that position causes me more pain, that might be a position that I don't really have access to, and my body thinks is unsafe. So we can look back at the exercises that you did yesterday. For example, felt okay. We started working out. We did chest press, and it was like, ooh, it made it worse. Right? Yeah. So now we look back at chest press in terms of, okay, what positions are we in? Do we have access to those positions? Right? Then we use that to build a roadmap to making your pain less and hopefully making you pain free. If we aren't talking about structure, we're talking about your body just thinks these positions are unsafe. If something doesn't increase your pain, it's probably not a position that your body thinks is unsafe. We just have some pain and then we're just going through different positions. But if it's like, oh, it makes my pain worse, now we've hit a position there where your body thinks it's unsafe. That means we need to look at that position and spend time in a pain-free range to gain access to that position and spend time there, so that when we go back and do these things, our body thinks it's safe.
Okay. So it's really just noticing it, and if you have the pain there, then kind of stepping back from that, and then, like you said, getting into that position and then working in that position and like allowing your body to realize like, hey, it's okay to be here. And then like strengthening upon that. And I think that's like where like the strength and stability thing get like kind of like mixed up a little bit, is like you have to like allow your body to be able to get there and like be comfortable there. And I guess like, be able to like stabilize there as well, but then like getting strong in that position as well. Like I see there being so much value there. So I like that you said it that way. When it comes to strengthening, anything per se, like for me, we have this exercise that I now have, right? And I think this is like important too, is like we have the band pull apart with the breathing, right? Well, is the goal going to be, let's get up to the 5th band, the super thick band where I'm pulling super hard? Or is it going to be more so like, let's do that movement and then get strong as hell with my pressing and feel better pressing? Like what's more important?
Right. So the exercise that we gave you to make your pain better is to get your body comfortable in that position. And then when we are comfortable in that position, we take the same position over to pressing. Right? So it's kind of like, imagine when you're in like a new place or like a sketchy neighborhood, right? You're not going to be yourself. You're going to keep to yourself. You're going to be quiet, right? You're not going to express yourself as much as you would until you get comfortable with that place. Now you're going to be yourself. You're going to be loud. It doesn't matter, right? So your body's not comfortable in that position. It can't express force. It can't produce strength, right, as it should or as it could, because it feels unstable and unsafe, right? So you're never going to chest press as much as you could because your body thinks those positions are unsafe. And we don't spend a lot of time in there. So spending time in those positions with our band drills, right, will give us, tell our body that it's okay, right? Then we spend more time doing pressing. Maybe we slow down the tempo, right? Lighten the load, do some more reps. Now we get a little bit more comfortable there. And then eventually our body's comfortable in that position enough to be able to express anything we want in that position. That's when we push a lot of weight. That's when we get better at skating. That's where we really push it.
And I'm assuming, just like anything, like this probably can change, right? Like how much you have to do these things compared to other times. I think that'd be a cool thing to talk about, because I feel like sometimes, some days you might have to do it, and some days you might not have to. I think that's something I kind of want to dive into. Like, do you ever see that happen? Like where, some days you might just be able to hop into it and be like, nope, I can press. Like I can press good right now. And then other days being like, oh, nope. Maybe I fell skating the day before and now I have pressing and I'm like, okay, well, nope, feels a little off. Like maybe I need to do this for a little bit. Where do you how do you see that being implemented into people's training and recovery processes?
So we still need to understand that you were a byproduct of every second of every day you spend on the earth, right? So say you had a bad week, your body might be a little bit more upregulated in terms of your nervous system, right? To shut out everything and just get through it.
Okay.
Right? Or if you're the type of person, maybe you have a bad week, your body's downregulated in terms of every single stimuli is going to feel 1,000 times more heightened because you're in that state. So in terms of the nervous system, like a kind of a big dimmer switch, if you will, right? Every process kind of goes up or down, right? We think about like heart rate, breathing rate, sensitivity to things, right? The nervous system regulates what is more important or less important. And then some days we're going to have more sensitivity to things. Some days we're going to have lower sensitivity to things, right? So say I have high sensitivity someday, I feel a little bit of stiffness coming into my workout, coming into my skate set, right? Maybe I want to down-regulate my nervous system a little bit. That's why these breathing drills, etc., all these things that down-regulate the nervous system are so popular, because now everything feels better, and then now I can ramp it back up in the way that I want, right? So it's really just you are a byproduct of the experiences that you've had and what stimuli that you're getting. So that sensitivity of your nervous system is going to be different on every single day that you walk into the gym and you grab your board.
Okay. All right. Now, when we're talking about, daily things then, and like how we, move and all that stuff when it comes to pain, I think another thing I want to ask you is, how does our perception of just like the things going on around us play into that? Like, I mean, I'm father of two, I got the wife. Like, what if come home from work and the kids have been hassling the wife all day, and now they're on me about it, and maybe I'm kind of already sore going into it, and now it's like my pain kicks up. Like, how does that play a role into it? Like, does the things around us and like our emotions kind of like help us dictate, like, or does it dictate our pain to some degree?
Right. So we talked about pain being the perception of all the stimuli, right? Like your emotions play into how we interpret all of that and how we experience the pain, right? And if we understand that, sometimes we can kind of like override that to an extent. So say that you're having a bad day and your shoulder's feeling bad, and we start to work out, and it's like it's not going the best. We can either like do something to try to make it better, or if we kind of just talk ourselves through like what is really happening? Why am I feeling pain? Right? Like, oh, it probably hurts because I'm having a bad day. You can almost like trick yourself into realizing that like you're not really having the symptoms that you think you're having or that you're experiencing. It's like, why does this hurt?
Okay.
Like, probably hurts because I had a bad day. Like, is something really wrong? Probably not. Right? It's like when you go to the doctor, you think something's wrong, and they're like, no, everything's fine. As soon as he tells you everything's fine, you're like, oh, feels great now.
I'm good. Yeah. Okay.
Right? So
you can kind of also almost use that for yourself. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I think that's a huge tip, because I catch myself getting there quite a bit, so it has to happen to everybody. Like I'm only assuming, because like I know I'll be having a day at work where it's just like I'm dealing, because like me being the delivery person for furniture, I'm the last person to deal with the customer, and we have to deal with like the butt end of all that, right? So it's like there'll be days where like every customer has just something to say that has nothing to really do with me. Like I'm just like, all right, well, I'm sorry, it's the wrong color. I'm not your salesperson. Like I brought you the wrong piece of furniture. I guess I apologize. And this is like one of those days, right? It builds up. And I'll notice like if I let myself like sit in that, and then just like the pain just kicks up, like you're saying. So it's good to like be able to use that as a trick of being like, hey, wait, did I get home for a second, be like, no, it's just a long day, and just like accepting it was a long day, and just being like, oh cool, now I probably will feel better and can have more fun with my kids, and so on and so forth. So I like that tip. That's a good one.
I think even coming back to that, understanding that the person that you're dealing with is also a byproduct of their environment, right? So them saying words to you has nothing to do with you at all. You are literally irrelevant.
Yes.
You could be no. You're just a human that now you get the butt end of their bad day, right? If you recognize that right away, and you go back to your truck, you're like, oh wow, like that person must have been having a bad day. Oh, their day gets better.
Okay. Well,
like it has nothing to do with me.
Yep.
Now that doesn't make your day worse, right? We kind of catch ourselves before that snowball of like, I'm having a day happens, and then when we get home and we train, we don't have pain.
And we feel good. Wow, look at that. It's a full circle. It's like the circle of life, almost. I like how you did that there. Brought it right back around. Huh. That was a good way to look at it. And that's the thing, too, is like just being aware, I think. And this is like, that's the thing, is like I think all this stuff we're talking about, like the training for skating, all this pain stuff, like it's just ways for us to just take a second and be aware of ourselves. And I think that's the biggest thing, is like once you can do that, and then you just allow yourself to continue doing that, you can really go quite far, I think. No, so that was great. Okay, one more thing I want to ask about pain, because I know we don't got too much time left. When, let's say you do have this injury, you've been checked out, right? And the doctor's like, hey, you broke your ankle, right? Like nothing too crazy, no compound fracture, just like a hairline fracture, put you in a cast or boot or whatever. You come out of it, you do your PT, and now you like get back to skating. I've done this from experience before. Like you go through PT and like you just do your PT. And especially when you're just working with like a general physical therapist, like they might not understand skating completely. So you just kind of do your stuff and then you hop back into it. Now, when you're feeling like a pain from something like that, right? When you had like a past injury, you work through your physical therapy and then you hop back into skating, and you're trying to like really just kind of work through it. Is that like a time you kind of have to like work through the pain, or do you need to also like figure out like what else can I be doing to help maybe strengthen certain things or give me access to a different range of motion? So like what do we do there in that case?
I think that is, the onus is on you, but it's also on the practitioner to, when we talk about like, we're actually talking about structure. Now we're talking about like healing times of bones, healing times of tissue, right? Like understanding a bone needs stress to remodel, but if it has too much stress, then it breaks down faster than it remodels, and then we have like an actual break. right? So it's on
Yes.
the practitioner kind of, but it's also on you to ask those questions, right? Like, oh,
Mm,
but if I get pain, does that mean something's wrong? Or like, how long does
yeah.
this take to heal? Or like, hey, I'm a skateboarder, I'm going to go back to doing this. And then if they don't
Mm-hmm.
know what's about skating, they'll either A, look it up, or B, you'll just explain it to them. And they might understand, they might not,
Mm-hmm.
right? But they're going to tell you like, oh, okay, like they know what impact is, right? It's like, hey, like maybe
Mm-hmm.
no big drops for 7 weeks after you get your cast off,
Yeah.
right? They keep it to
Mm-hmm.
this, right? So I think it's
Mm-hmm.
on you to ask those questions in terms of like, you know your life better than anyone, right? So
Yes.
you're ready when those kind of niggles come up, right? Like if I'm telling you after you get out of your cast, okay, like your bone is healed completely, right? It's gonna remodel,
Mm-hmm.
so we need to put load through it. You're gonna feel some stiffness. You're gonna feel some pain maybe because we had a cast on for so long. You're gonna get
Mm-hmm.
into certain positions that are gonna feel weird, right? But in
Mm-hmm.
terms of skating, take it easy for the first couple weeks. Slowly go back
Mm-hmm.
into it, and you'll be fine. And then like now you know when something happens that you might freak out and be like, my bone is broken again. Be like, oh, don't worry. Kyle told me like
Yeah.
my bone is completely healed. I need to put forces through it. This is normal because I had a cast
Yeah.
on. I'm all stiff, right? So it's on you to ask, but it's mostly on the practitioner. But it's also no one's perfect. You need to ask these
Yeah.
questions in terms of like telling them what
Whoa.
things you need to do after you're done this injury.
Boom. And that's why I asked you, because it was like, I think that's important, because it's like, yeah, like the practitioner, yeah, like they should know whatever, but I think it's just, take responsibility for like yourself as a skater, and like just because I think like if I would have known this like when I was younger, and I would have known like the questions to ask or like the things to say just a little bit more, it would have been huge, because I probably would have been able to get like a little bit more help after the fact of then just being like, oh, got my cast off. All right, cool. I'm going back to jump down a 12 stair. Like that was just my mentality back in the day. And then I'd be back in there 3 weeks later with another break in the same ankle. It's like, all right, well, probably should have been asking better questions. So I think that's just an important thing to note. Is just like, hey, like take accountability for it, like, and know that you are the skater and like you have the right to ask and tell and all these things, so they can completely understand like how you skate and how you operate, because the more they know, they should be able to then give you better answers and more clear definitive time frames and things too, because I think that's important, is like understanding like, hey, if you're told don't jump down something for 7 weeks, just don't go jump down something. Like there is other ways to skate. I know it's hard, but just realize like there's a lifetime of this if you just don't go jump down something for 7 more weeks, like, or whatever the case may be. And just like shifting focus, I think, is like a big thing to be able to do, is just being able to be like, hey, I can't do that right now, so why don't I just do this for the interim, and then knowing like it will come back. Being able to shift focus, I think, is a huge thing when it comes to skating and like injuries and stuff. Like knowing like, hey, I just not able to do that at the moment, still can skate. At least I still can skate, but let's not do that.
I think a big part of it as well to add on to that is not just knowing but understanding. So when I
Yeah.
say, hey, you can't do this for 7 weeks, you're immediately going to want to do it because I told you not to, right? But if
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, hey, your bone is still not 100%, it's like 95%. I don't want to push it. We might have another break if you jump down 12 set, right? Now you understand,
Mm-hmm.
and when you're about to jump down those stairs, you hear my voice in your head being like, you might have another break, and you might think twice about doing it.
Yeah.
And then when you're with like-minded people, other people who skate, now you can understand your
Mm-hmm.
own experience to share your experience with them, right? And you're more likely to do things that you understand rather than just things that you're told. So asking
That's
questions of like
the
of
key.
the practitioner of like, why do I do these things? Right? Why am I doing this
Mm-hmm.
exercise? Why does it work? Right? Just be curious all the time. I think that's a good take home message for anyone.
Boom. I'm gonna leave it right there. That's a great way to end it right there. So Yeah, real quick before I end it, let people know where they can find you. So if they want to ask you more about this, they can definitely do so.
Yeah, you can hit me up on Instagram at Coach Baxter, Baxter. All my info is in my link tree through there, so I'll just leave it at that. Feel free to DM me if you have any questions or need anything from me on the services I offer, etc. So that's Coach Baxter on Instagram, Baxter.
Boom. If you're on YouTube, I'll have it up on the screen. And if you're not, everything will be down in the show notes. But hey, we're going to leave it at that for today. So just know that everybody is capable of being extreme.